Brittany, I'm so excited about this because I've come on your channel, of course, and just had a
Mhm.
Q&A session with you. But I thought it
Yeah.
was so important to put out to the outspoken audience when I'm away on my
Mhm.
cruise so that they can put.
Hey everyone! Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm diving deep into one of the most explosive royal stories out there. How Meghan Markle has allegedly changed Prince Harry forever.
The questions to you, the Royal News Network. And I have to say, Brittany, I posted it with the amazing photo of you with Catherine, the Princess of Wales, and everyone was just so blown away by that. So we will talk about that picture
Yes.
and what happened in that picture in just a little
Mhm.
bit. But first, let me get to the questions. And Chrysler1 asks, does Brittany think that when William becomes king, he will strip Harry and Meghan's titles from them, or is that wishful thinking? Also, I feel Harry is being haunted by guilt of what he's done to his mother's legacy and his grandmother's hurtful heart. Would you agree, Brittany?
I mean, I definitely hope Harry at some point recognizes sort of the horrible things he has done and how he has hurt their legacies in so many ways. So I really hope Harry does recognize that and feels a bit of guilt over sort of kind of, he will evoke their memories sometimes to justify what he's doing. And it's completely unjustified, I would argue, to do that because they can't speak for themselves. So I hope he's at some point definitely haunted by what he has done. Now, when it comes to the titles for Harry and Meghan, I think definitely it would probably be William who that task is left to if Harry doesn't at some point either divorce Meghan or some sort of fracture doesn't happen. I think William will be leading that charge. Of course, he has to go through Parliament. I've always been of the opinion that Parliament will not move unless the palace, not maybe necessarily publicly, but behind the scenes goes, yeah, we sort of approve this move. And then I think Parliament will take those steps forwards. I don't think they'll do that arbitrarily unless Harry and Meghan really, really step in it. But I think William will definitely be like, okay, we've given them enough time. They've totally broken the Sandringham Accord. So okay, we're gonna do this. At this point, I'm king. I'm prepared for that to receive that blowback. Let's get to it. I think that is definitely when that'll happen. Hopefully. Fingers crossed.
And yeah, there's plenty of truth and myth behind those headlines about Harry being a kept man. But before we get into it, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you don't want to miss the latest royal tea. All right, let's rewind for a second.
At Bells in Sky says, Dan, could you please ask Brittany, oh, I like this, where does she think Harry and Meghan Markle will be in 5 years? Because Brittany, of course,
Ooh.
it's now 5 years since Megxit. I think we could probably both admit, Brittany, and of course on your channel, we spoke a lot about the whole background to the Megxit story and everything, so people can
Mhm.
go and watch that on RNN. But I think, Brittany, we would both admit that neither of us thought it would ever end up this disastrous. Like, I would say I knew it was going to be bad and that it wasn't going to be
Mhm.
easy and there were going to be massive bumps along the way, but it has been worse than I could ever have imagined.
Oh, yes, 100%. That's a great question because I sort of knew that at some point things would start to devolve. I think always the threat is that if certain avenues weren't bringing in cash anymore, Megan would devolve into lower and lower realms in order to make money. I think going to an influencer status and basically attempting to sell her clothes online and get a commission from it is a pretty good indicator that things aren't going super well behind the scenes. But in 5 years, I mean, I didn't even think they would make it 5 years in terms of their marriage. Obviously, they blew past that. But I think the 10-year marriage mark, which would be in 2028, I'm not sure if they'll make it much past then. You have two people who really don't have that much in common at the core of themselves. He had to change everything about himself in order to please her. And at some point, if things get bad enough for him, and if she finds a wealthier guy, she will go for that. She will 100% go for that if she can find a wealthier guy who is interested in funding her eccentricities and her Cartier jewelry collection. So she will go after that. But yeah, I don't see them making it much longer in the 5 years. And I think we'll see increasingly desperate attempts to make cash because that house is wildly expensive. And so they're going to be working really hard to try to make things happen. And I think we'll see continued failures on their end.
Yeah, I think so too. Obviously, the big question is whether the marriage remains intact in 5 years. I know you've always said, Brittany, at least from Meghan's point of view, this was never a marriage anchored in love. It was a marriage anchored in the greenback, the moolah, which I've always said as well, to be honest. I think in 5 years, though, Harry, and this is so tragic to think, but I honestly believe he will still be trying to make it work. I have always predicted that when the children enter their teenage years, the marriage will collapse. But I think at this point, Harry has lost everything. He knows that. So he is almost totally trapped. I know a lot can happen in 5 years, but remember, it is the children at this point that is keeping him there.
And the cash as well. She's the one who's making most of the money at this point. She's the one who's probably going to be making most of the money in the future. He's sort of essentially given up doing anything else. He's just basically going to be a kept man. And so that might keep him around a little bit longer too, going, I don't know if I can leave because we've wasted all my inheritance money. I really have nothing. Everything's in her name and I'm just sort of screwed. So he's definitely going to be screwed over at some point in all
A
this.
kept man with one charity. It really is pathetic where it's all ended up.
Remember Prince Harry before Meghan? He was the royal rebel. Wild parties, daring tours. Always the cheeky one in the family. Fast forward to now, and people say he barely resembles his old self.
Now, at Blue Ella writes to us, Brittany, don't you think removal of titles, so this is this prediction that in the end, William will end up stripping Harry and Meghan of their titles. But Blue Ella says, don't you think removal of titles is a bad PR move for the palace? Given that the media focuses on the drama, it won't matter the validity of the decision. The message would be the royals can't stand that the Sussexes are leaving the best alive, i.e. jealousy. Further, it won't stop others from treating them as royals. And if they do royal stuff without titles, that would seem as a victory against the royals. Remember their rebuttal to the Queen, service is universal. You cannot compare this situation with Denmark, as the prince there was not on bad terms with his mum or brother, hence he only complained about the decision at the time. Sweden, on the other hand, the laws are codified in their constitution. Not sure the issue of titles is with the Brits. And Brittany, I know you know a lot about the European royal families, so there are comparable situations there. I love hearing the other side, so thank you very much for Blue Ella for putting the other side. But I'm going to be honest with you, Brittany, I completely disagree with her. I think the title should have been removed at the Sandringham summit, and then so much of this pain would have been avoided. Harry should not be in the line of succession. His children should not be in the line of succession. He should not be a Councillor of State. It is embarrassing for the British royal family, and it's also like a massive reputational risk.
It is. And I go back to just looking at branding. Like everything is branding now. I know that's maybe a bit of an American view of things, but there's so much connected to branding. And what you can do here, which is very simple, is sort of dilute Harry and Meghan are diluting the royal brand. So, I mean, you can almost play it to the international press is that they are rogue at this point. They do not represent us. And in order to very clearly draw the line of separation, we have to remove the titles for the future. I don't think there would be much pushback against that. Now, early in the Brexit days, there might have been more of that. But at this point, I think anybody with an ounce of common sense can look at the whole situation and go, yeah. They understand why this is being done. This sort of has to be done at some point. And so I think it's totally appropriate to do it. I don't think they'll get a lot of pushback. I think people will recognize the situation, and Harry and Meghan are gone. They're in California. They're doing that. And the royals are like, well, we have to protect ourselves. And again, I think people will totally understand that.
Yeah, very true. Now, Southern Belle, who I imagine probably watching us from Texas or somewhere like that with that sort of name. Southern Belle 5573. She writes, and this is in regards to Harry and Meghan and Lilibet specifically. She says, if their daughter was not born in the UK, Is she allowed to be in the line of succession? Does she have to be born on UK soil, Brittany?
So, what actually happened? A lot of royal insiders say everything changed when Meghan entered the scene. She's not your typical royal. American, ambitious, outspoken.
As far as I'm aware, that's not a stipulation. I think we would have heard that sort of immediately when she was born. So I don't think that is an actual part. We've seen other royals who have been born outside the country still hold their places in the line of succession because, people move, maybe they're part of the military and they have a military assignment and they're somewhere else. So I don't think that precludes her from being in the line of succession. Obviously, people have a lot of other questions regarding Lilibet, but I always come back to, like, if you were born somewhere, that's fine. Leonor of Sweden was born in New York City. But when it comes to the future of the monarchy, titles placed in the line of succession, you do need to have some sort of connection to the country that you're allegedly representing. Because Harry and Meghan, by using their titles, by having their children have titles, they are an extension of representative of the UK. Now, we all know that's not really the case, but to others, it does look like that. So I think, again, the separation here is key, but she's still in the line of succession. They haven't said she's not. So it doesn't seem like there's a letter of patent to address that because it wasn't really an issue. I don't think this.
No, because it would just
about that too much.
Impossible to think that an heir to the throne would not be born in the United Kingdom. Because remember, in the past, Brittany, the British Home Secretary had to be in the room to actually advocate that the birth had taken place and that there had been no funny business, that the baby had actually been born of the body of the royal. So, of course, it was not even considered that there would be someone high up the line of succession born overseas. Now, what we don't have is that same sort of constitutional rule like the US presidency, where if you are born outside of the US, you are ineligible to become US president. Personally, I think these rules need to be updated, Brittany, and I know Charles has been so reluctant to do so, but of course you should be born in the United Kingdom if you are going to be in the line of succession. I believe there could be very easily stipulated exceptions, which would be if, for example, you were serving overseas on a British Army base, for example. My father was born on a British Army base in Malta when my grandfather was fighting after World War II. I am still totally able to receive my British citizenship for obvious reasons. So I think there could be exceptions like that. However, it would be quite unusual, wouldn't it, for a female member of the British royal family 9 months pregnant to be overseas. I guess potentially that would be if their husband was overseas. But I think it is insane that Archie and Lilibet remain in the line of succession when they are being raised at Californian schools, just totally nuts. But unfortunately, the rules at the moment do not preclude Lilibet in any way from being on the line of succession based on where she was born. Of course, there are a whole load of other reasons why she could be removed from the line of succession, but based on the fact she was born in Los Angeles, no, that is not an issue.
Brittany, a top royal commentator, recently claimed Meghan's influence has totally shifted the power dynamic in their marriage. She suggests Meghan is calling the shots, from their charity work to leaving royal duties to those headline-making interviews.
Now, Geraldine Kearney, 542, asks of you, Brittany, does she think that royals like Zara and Mike, Beatrice and Edo, Eugenie and Jack, and other young royals will step up when Prince William becomes king? Interesting.
Oh, that's a great question because I absolutely loved that William held a cousin's Buckingham Palace garden party last year. I thought that was absolutely fabulous. He's obviously very close with them. Now, Zara and Mike, I think, are perfectly fine doing their own thing. They've been quite successful. She still does some equestrian events. He's obviously a former rugby player. I don't think they have that much interest in being full-time royals. They still have things where they sort of, you could argue by extension, represent the royal family. I think they're lovely and fun and definitely always great to see them around. I think Beatrice would have loved to be a working royal. It's sort of a shame that Charles hasn't extended that olive branch to her because although she has a job, she has 2 kids now. I think she would absolutely love to represent her family. She had a deep love and I think respect for her grandmother. So she would love to do it. So does Eugenie. And I think, elevate some of the youngers. You definitely need a younger royal family. If you just compare the Brits to the other royals that I follow, I mean, the only exception maybe would be, maybe Norway a bit. King Harold is kind of in his late 80s at this point, but most of the royal families I feel quite young to me because a lot of their younger members are turning 18. They're going to formal events and stuff. And the Brits have a bit of a different system. It takes William, I don't think, attended a state dinner until his late 20s or maybe even into his 30s. And we have, 20-year-olds attending state dinners. So in other European countries. So I would love to see more youth in the British monarchy. I think that's really, really key. And I think they need that bit of infusion of energy. I think that would be, so incredibly important to the future.
Can I just make a message or deliver a message to Prince William on this, which is that, William, your entire focus, and by the way, I do not blame you for this over the past few years, has been protecting your 3 children. That has been your overwhelming desire to make sure that George and Charlotte and Louis grow up as normal as possible and not thrust into royal duties earlier than they need to. What would be the obvious way to protect them on a medium-term basis, given that you don't necessarily want them to take up any royal duties until they're in their 30s? The obvious way to do that would be to build up a generation of royals between yourselves and your children. And the very obvious people to do that are the Edinburghs and the Yorks. And let's not even think about Andrew and Fergie. Of course, they're out of the picture for the moment. But Beatrice and Eugenie are ready to do it. Mike and Zara are beloved and bring a bit of showbiz glamour. I agree with you, Brittany. They don't want any sort of formal role, but I think they would love to serve that role at certain engagements like they did at the garden parties last year. And William, that would allow a little bit of space for George, for Charlotte and Louis. By thrusting out the other royals, which I know has been part of Charles's whole approach for a streamlined monarchy, what you're actually doing is piling the pressure on your own children, which is the opposite of what you want.
Some even argue Harry's become more controlled, maybe even trapped, while Meghan takes the lead both publicly and privately. The kept man rumors? Well, they're all over the tabloids, but it's clear Meghan's presence has redefined Harry's life. But here's my take.
Yes, all the pressure really is on William and his family at this point. Unless they elevate somebody else, it's all on them, which I think is really, really unfair, to be quite honest. So I really hope that Charles decides to go in a different direction.
And on a similar note, actually, Harold Toludas 1426 asks, I'd love to know what kind of monarchy Brittany thinks it will be once William becomes king. Do you think he'll keep most traditions or gusset and change things to match a modern UK society?
Oh, that's another really good one because there's a part of me that really hopes this doesn't happen, but I imagine things will probably end up sort of this way. I don't think William is necessarily a huge fan of all the pomp and ceremony. So I could see him definitely cutting things down. I hope he doesn't gut it, because one of the things that makes monarchies unique in comparison to celebrities is that they have carriages and they have fly paths. And yes, those things are just sort of, you could argue, a little bit ridiculous, but that's what makes the British monarchy the British monarchy, is all the pomp and ceremony. If you completely gut that, then there's really not much difference between you and any other celebrity at that point, or you could argue government official, what have you. So I hope William keeps it. I think his natural inclination will be to trim it a lot, but I hope somebody's like, hey, totally understand where you're going. We can make some changes here, but we need to sort of keep this in order to sort of keep the magic of the monarchy alive. So I'm really anxious to see where things go, but I could definitely see some more modernizations, because I feel like the Brits are still catching up to some of their counterparts in terms of how they go about, let's say, not only engagements, but social media and those sorts of things. The Brits are getting there, but some of the other royal families, I think, do it a little bit better. So I'm anxious to see William modernize more in those ways as well.
Okay, so Brittany, I promise this. Nanders TVR2 says, Dan, Ask her to tell us all about this photo. What a lovely surprise. And it's, of course, because I posted you and Catherine with that wonderful selfie. What was she like, Brittany?
Oh, she was lovely. So I didn't get too much time with her. So if you've never been to a walkabout, sort of what happens is in this instance, it was right before the coronation, and I heard a lot of the royal reporters talking about how there would be this engagement and a walkabout. So I got there, I want to say about 4 or 5 hours before the event. I was like the third person there. And so, you line up, the crowd gathers, and Catherine and William arrived, which was wonderful. They actually stopped like right in front of us, which was fantastic. I got some great pictures of them. And then they went inside for the engagement. But after that point, I've followed royals for a while. I followed Catherine and William around a bit in Boston and missed some opportunities to get good pictures of them or really see them. And so this was the chance. You weren't sure what was going to happen because some of it's luck, some of it's strategy in terms of getting there early, finding a good spot. Some of it's just luck. You don't know where the royal is going to go. And so Catherine, of course, ended up coming over to our side. She ended up going further down the line and making her way to us. And so I have like a video of her chatting to somebody, I think about, the weather for the coronation and making sure, you're prepared for rain, because obviously it rained that day. I was there. I was in the crowd. So that was quite fun. And then so she came by and I shook her hand, and she was sort of going to move past because I knew she needed to talk to other people. But what I really wanted was a selfie. And so I asked her once, and then I asked her again. And on the second time she heard me. And so she came over and, we took it. And it's actually really cool because Chris Jackson, who's, obviously a very famous royal photographer, he actually has a picture of me getting the picture with Catherine, which is sort of kind of a cool picture-in-picture moment. I found it on Getty Images later. Very excited about that. And so it was very sweet. Kind of the funniest thing, because I did a live stream after it, and one of the most consistent questions I got was, what does she smell like? And unfortunately, I don't have a great sense of smell, so I can't tell you, but what I can tell you is she was absolutely lovely, very, very engaged with everyone, and just very, very sweet. And there's actually a video from overhead somebody else took of me asking her for the selfie, and you can hear my little voice and us and see us doing it from overhead, which is so cool.
What a lovely
It was such a cool moment.
What a lovely moment. And on a personal note as well, Brittany, Mun Ao 8453 says, wait, a Mark Stein cruise, have fun, because right now I'm probably on the water somewhere, Brittany, on this Mark Stein cruise. But she says, I want to know how she started her royal reporting and why.
Maybe Harry just found someone who matches his energy and helps him carve a new path. Is he controlled or just empowered to live differently? The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. If you found this eye-opening, give it a thumbs up and share it with your fellow royal watchers. The royal story is always evolving, and I'll be here to break it all down for you. See you in the next video.